It all started the day I came home to find a bright red paper taped to my front door, the words stamped across it in bold letters: "Notice of violation, illegal structure." For a moment, I thought it was some kind of prank. My house wasn't just legal, it was the dream home I had saved for nearly a decade to buy. Every brick, every panel, every room was built with permits and inspections I had carefully documented. And yet, according to the HOA, the Homeowners Association that ruled our community like a private government, my entire house was not supposed to exist. My stomach sank as I stood there, clutching the paper, watching neighbors peek through blinds across the street. That was the first hook in a web I never thought I'd fall into. But what I discovered about the HOA would turn my entire life upside down. I stormed into their next board meeting with the notice in hand, demanding answers. They sat behind their long mahogany table like judges in a courtroom. The president, a gray-haired man with sharp eyes, barely looked at me as he said, "Your house was built on non-compliant land. Technically, it's illegal. We will be pursuing removal." The room went silent. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. My heart raced. Removal? My entire home? Gone? It didn't make sense. I asked for evidence, but all they gave me were vague references to old zoning rules. The way they spoke wasn't just bureaucratic, it was smug, as if they had already won. And that's when something in me snapped. I decided I wouldn't just defend my home. I would uncover what they were hiding. The deeper I dug, the stranger things became. The county clerk's office showed no record of my house being non-compliant. The building permits were all valid, but tucked away in an old filing cabinet was a single map, an old blueprint of the neighborhood with several lots marked in red. Mine was one of them. But here's the kicker. The lots marked in red weren't just homes. They were all houses of people who had clashed with the HOA in the past. One man had fought them over excessive fees. A woman had complained about harassment. Each of them had mysteriously moved out, their houses foreclosed, their voices silenced. My skin went cold as I realized this wasn't about zoning, this was about control. But just as I pieced that together, the HOA struck back. One night, I came home to find my mailbox ripped open, my tires slashed, and a second notice: failure to comply will result in legal escalation. That wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. The fear set in, but so did determination. I started recording everything: board meetings, phone calls, even the strange cars idling outside my home at night. It felt less like a neighborhood dispute and more like I was up against a secret organization with something enormous to hide. And I was right. A week later, while combing through public tax records, I stumbled across a revelation that nearly knocked me off my chair. Several HOA board members were quietly profiting from construction contracts in the area. They were forcing homeowners out, declaring houses illegal, then selling the land under the table to developers at double the price. My house wasn't a problem for them. It was a jackpot. They wanted me gone so they could cash in. I thought I had the smoking gun, until I found something worse. In a box of archived HOA documents at City Hall, I uncovered files labeled Non-Disclosure Agreement, Homeowner Settlements. Inside were confidential records of payouts, tens of thousands of dollars, made to silence families who had been forced to leave. The HOA wasn't just corrupt, they were criminals, running a racket in plain sight, hiding behind the law. And the deeper I went, the more dangerous it became. One night, I woke to the sound of footsteps on my porch. My security camera caught two figures in hoodies trying to pry open my window. I shouted, the figures bolted, and the police arrived too late. But when I showed the footage, the officer just shook his head and muttered, "Don't pick fights you can't win." That's when it hit me. The HOA had influence everywhere, even in law enforcement. I wasn't just fighting for my house, I was fighting for my life. Rehook. But then came the twist I never expected. A neighbor, An elderly woman named Mrs. Callahan, who always seemed distant, knocked on my door the next day. Her voice shook as she whispered, "I know what they're doing. I've seen it, and I kept quiet because they threatened my family. But you might be able to stop them." She handed me a manila envelope. Inside were copies of secret HOA meeting minutes. One entry stood out: Project Erase, Phase 2, Target Lot 17. Lot 17 was my house. Beneath it, scrawled in handwriting, was a chilling note: action required before September. My blood froze. I had weeks before they moved against me. Armed with this evidence, I reached out to a journalist who had previously written exposés on local corruption. He agreed to meet. But the night before our meeting, his car mysteriously caught fire outside his apartment. He survived, but he backed out, terrified. That's when I realized I couldn't rely on anyone else. If I wanted to win, I had to go all in. I filed a lawsuit against the HOA, attaching every piece of evidence I had collected. But lawsuits take time, and they knew it. That's when the smear campaign began. Flyers appeared around the neighborhood labeling me a criminal, accusing me of fraud, even suggesting I forged my house documents. Neighbors I thought were friends started avoiding me. The HOA was isolating me, breaking me down, and for a moment, I almost gave up. But then, another twist. One of their own board members reached out to me, a younger man, clearly nervous, who confessed he had joined thinking it was a harmless volunteer position. But when he learned about the corruption, he tried to resign, and they blackmailed him into silence. He handed me recordings of private board discussions. In them, I heard exactly what I needed: the president admitting in his own voice that they planned to declare multiple homes illegal and sell them off. That was the bombshell I needed. The lawsuit exploded into the media. Reporters camped outside the neighborhood. The board denied everything, but the recordings, the documents, and the testimony painted them into a corner. One by one, residents came forward, sharing stories of threats, harassment, and forced evictions. It wasn't just my battle anymore. It was a revolution. In the end, the HOA collapsed under the weight of its own corruption. Several board members were indicted on fraud and racketeering charges. The president himself was led away in handcuffs. And my house? The court declared it 100% legal. I not only kept it, but I became the voice of the community, exposing the truth that everyone else had been too afraid to face. But here's the final twist. Months later, as I was finally settling back into a normal life, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single line: "You may have won the battle, but the war isn't over." I don't know who sent it. Maybe a remnant of the HOA, maybe someone higher up. But one thing's for sure. What I uncovered wasn't just a neighborhood scandal. It was the tip of something much bigger. And I know one day they'll come back.